Good morning, SEMO, and welcome back to another episode of Hawk's Nest. I'm your host, Maddox Murphy, and joining me are Dylan Nooner and Isaiah Collins. We hope everyone had a great spring break, but for our athletes, there's no time for breaks. While everyone else was away, they were hard at work in their busy schedules. Today, we'll dive into the baseball and softball teams' recent games, as well as taking a closer look at the track team as they transition to the outdoor season. Make sure to stick around until the end for our Athlete Spotlight of the Week. All that and more coming up.
So the baseball team has hit a bit of a cold streak here recently. They're 3-5 in their last 8 games, dropping 2 of 3 in their back-to-back weekend series, one against Marshall and one against Western Kentucky. A couple weeks ago, they lost their midweek game to Evansville, 6-5. But then recently, this week, they actually got back in the win column, defeating Austin Peay a score of 8-7. All of them close games, all in all. They fall to 9-13 on the year. Not exactly. It hasn't been a very difficult non-conference schedule, I would say. So I would expect the team to be more around that 500 mark, not 4 games below. But there has been a couple reasons why this team has struggled a bit early on. Number one, it's been the slow starts to games. When they're trailing after 5 innings, the team is just 3-8. And if you go an inning after that to the 6th and beyond, they're just 1-9. So they're struggling to get that big comeback, and just falling behind early in games has been an issue for them. The offense hasn't been the big concern for this team this year yet. It's been the pitching. Outside of Peyton Lawrence and Kyle Miller, not a single pitcher on the staff has an ERA lower than 4. The good news about this is the offense has continued to put up numbers. Michael Mugen continues to be on a tear. He leads the team in pretty much every offensive category. And then they've also got good production from freshman infielder Brooks Kettering. He started every single game this year. He's batting .273 with 11 RBIs and with a .390 on base. They do start their conference schedule this weekend against Eastern Illinois. So what would your expectations going into the conference schedule based on what we've seen so far from this team?
I mean, I expect them to do what they've mainly done over the last few years, which is be the top team in the OVC. You talked about Michael Mugen and Brooks Kettering. Also, Josh Cameron's picked it up a little bit as of late. So I expect them to basically be the top dog in the OVC.
Yeah, I still have really high hopes for this team. Obviously, it's no secret. There's a lot of talent on this team, and we see that a lot on the offensive side. But we just struggle a little bit to get everything going. So I feel confident that we will kind of pick it up and be good when it comes to this conference play. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how they transition to that.
Right. I always say there's kind of 3 keys to a successful baseball team, in my opinion, and it's true at every level. It's the pitching, defense, and then timely hitting. It's seen they play great defense, but they've lacked in the other 2 categories at times. Either they have struggled to get that timely hit, they'll fall behind, they can't string hits together, or vice versa, they'll be up big, but then the pitching just falls apart at the back end. But it's still early. Like I said, they haven't started their non-conference schedule yet, so I'm not worried about the baseball team yet. I think once those 3 elements start to click, I think we're going to see them, like you said, Isaiah, back at the top of the OVC.
Since we last met, softball started their in-conference season. They kicked things off, losing 2 out of 3 games against Eastern Illinois. Once again, the Red Hawk offense kind of sputtered aside from Aubrey Shore. Aubrey Shore hit 6 for 13 that series. The rest of the Red Hawks' bats didn't really seem to be woken up. They then would split a 2-game series with Bradley. And then, however, they started to show signs of life later on in the week, where they defeated SIU Edwardsville in a 3-game sweep. And the Red Hawks' bats, aside from Aubrey Shore, also seemed to pick things up. Marissa Peaks, senior transfer, we'll talk about her later. She had a big week, resulting in her winning OVC Player of the Week for her efforts batting-wise. Guys, what are you guys thinking about SEMO softball's hopes throughout the rest of the season?
They had that tough non-conference schedule, so it's kind of hard to judge what we were really going to see once you got into conference play. Usually this time of the year, the pitching is usually ahead of the offense. It takes a while to get the timing down and everything. So I'm not worried, especially when it comes to the offense for the softball team.
So one team that we haven't talked a whole lot about this semester is the track team. And the track team just finished up their indoor season where they won the 2023-2024 Team Sportsmanship Award for both the men's and women's indoor track and field. That was an OVC award, big deal. And now they're kind of kicking off their outdoor season in Conway, Arkansas for the Richard Martin Invite. That happened this past week. We have some really strong returning athletes, and we saw that kind of play out in the meet. So on day one, they started the season strong with a couple of first place finishes. We saw Parker Fearborn with a new PR in the hammer throw. Shay DeGrafe in the women's javelin, she also had a PR there. And day two, we just continued that hot streak. I mean, we saw a win in the discus. We saw a win in the women's discus. We saw first in the women's 100-meter hurdle race, first in the women's 100-meter and 200-meter, and first in the pole vault. So really strong outing for them. And the track team is heading to Oxford, Mississippi this weekend for the Ole Miss Open, March 22nd to 23rd. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes from that. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for, this week's Athlete Spotlight of the Week.
We have softball catcher/DH Marissa Peak. As we talked about, Marissa Peak won the OVC Player of the Week for her efforts, and for good reason. She batted .556, 2 homers, 5 RBIs, had an OPS over 2, which is insane. And the senior catcher from Iowa really showed up and provided a bat in the Red Hawks lineup aside from Aubrey Shore.
Right, and then I think that's, like we've mentioned about the softball team, it's been the offense that has been off to the slow start. And it's really just been Aubrey Shore, and that's about it. So I think we were really waiting for someone else to step up. And she really, like this past week, like you mentioned, getting OVC Player of the Week, she really stepped into that role and helped lift the Red Hawks. And that's what we saw, those couple conference wins that they picked up. She was a big part of that.
We have another exciting week here in SEMO Athletics. Take a look at what's coming up this coming week. That's it for us this week. Thanks for tuning in to another episode. Make sure to follow us on socials at OnTargetArrow and Southeast Arrow for all the updates. I'm Maddox.
I'm Dylan.
I'm Isaiah.
And this is Hawks Nest. Have a great week.